So on May 22nd, 2020, in Willington, Connecticut, which was a pretty small town in Connecticut, it was mostly filled with a lot of nature and trees and trails. A lot of people went out there to start their own farm because the town was also known for their very wide selection of farmland. And on this day of May 22nd is when 62-year-old Ted decided to go out of his house and check up on his barn. And it was around 9 a.m. at this point. This was not something that Ted did very rarely. Usually as part of Ted's morning routine is that he would go out into his backyard and go out to his barn, because Ted, he created furniture for a living. But not only would he create furniture, he wouldn't just find pieces of wood in nature and then cut a flat top with 4 legs and call it a coffee table. He more just found very interesting pieces in nature and worked around the nature to create an even more beautiful piece. He also had his own company called Everlasting Woods, where he would sell all types of furniture, and he was actually pretty well known for it.
Ted DeMers of Willington, an artistic furniture maker.
I let the wood kind of tell me where it's going to go. The designs come right out of what I see in the pieces that we find, and 90% of the material that we use comes right off the property. I find a lot of enjoyment just going out and finding materials and looking for unique pieces. A lot of the trees that I use are just about ready to go out, so some of the voids and the imperfections and the things that have happened to the trees over the years are the things that make the furniture special.
And along with Ted's own company, he also had a wife, Cindy, and 2 young sons that he absolutely loved. He was very, very involved in his sons' life. He was a little league coach for their baseball team. He chaperoned all of their field trips. He would attend all of their sport games. But as Ted is in his barn, he's working on his furniture, that's when he looks outside of the doors and he sees this young man walking down the road. Now, this was really odd because the road that Ted lived on, it was Myrtle Road, and this was a dead end road that nobody really went down unless you lived there. Especially just walking down the road was not something that usually people did. I mean, there was really no sidewalks to walk either. And so when Ted saw this young man just kind of wandering around, okay, I don't recognize him. He doesn't seem like he's from around here. Maybe he's lost. Maybe he's trying to get reception. Maybe he needs a phone. Ted, being the extremely open-hearted and kind person he went over to this young man and he asked him if everything was okay, if he needed a phone. And that's when this young man says, yes, actually, I was at the top of the hill, and as I was there, my motorbike completely gave out, and now I'm just kind of wandering around looking for a reception. Do you think you could help me? So Ted's like, of course I can help you. I'm a handyman, so I know a thing or two about mechanics. So let me just go grab my toolbox inside my barn, and then we'll go up to your motorbike and let's see what I can do. So that's exactly what Ted does. He goes inside his house, he grabs his car keys and his toolbox, and he also lets Sydney know of what's going on. He lets her know, hey, you'll never believe it. I found this young kid on the side of the road. He said that his motorbike died up the road. I'm going to take my toolbox and we're going to go up there and see if I can fix it before he has to call a tow. So Sydney's like, okay, that's fine. I'll see you in a couple minutes. And so Ted leaves. And at first, Ted and this young man were going to take Ted's truck up there until the young man was like, oh, well, actually, I don't think we have to take a car because it's pretty close by. It's right up the hill. So Ted was like, okay. And that's exactly what they did. Ted and this young man walked up the hill and made it to this young man's red motorbike. But as soon as they got to the motorbike, that's when Ted was leaning down, looking at it, trying to see what was wrong with it. And that's when this young man started beating on Ted for seemingly no reason. He started to punch Ted, hit him, kick him. This led Ted to scream for help and yell out loud, which also got attention from all of the other neighbors who were now looking out their windows and seeing Ted get beat by this random person. And the house that all of this commotion was happening in front of was the home of 80-year-old John Franco. So when 80-year-old John Franco looks out his window and sees that his neighbor Ted is getting beat by this young kid, John decides decides to go out there and he approaches Ted and this young man, trying to, intervene. Maybe he can try to help de-escalate the situation. But when John walked over there, unfortunately, that's when this young man looked to John and started beating on John as well. He started to punch John, kick him, hit him. There was one point where he had pushed John into the bushes on the side of his house and started beating him inside of the bushes until eventually this young man just decided to stop and he got on his red motorbike and ran off.
There's someone beating my neighbor with a bat or something outside his house.
Okay.
And he's threatening me and my family, and now he's about to drive away on a red motorcycle. They're in really bad shape. Oh, no. Oh, my God.
Just stay on the phone,
One of them is missing a hand.
Stay on the phone, please.
Do you have people en route from Myrtle Road? There's supposed to be 2 injured parties there from an assault. He's saying one of the parties is missing their hand. Now, he thought it was a bat they used, but maybe there was some other instrument.
Yeah, we're at Myrtle Road in Wellington, and at the end of the Myrtle Road are 2 very hurt men, and they got attacked by a guy on a motorcycle. This is an emergency. Motorcycle kid went down Myrtle Road and went onto Route 320, and I don't know where he went from there.
Now, these 911 calls would vary. There was one 911 call where someone was saying that this young man had a bat, like a baseball bat, and was swinging it around at people. And then another neighbor who said that they could have sworn they saw some sort of blade or a large knife, because when police would actually show up to the scene and attend to Ted's injuries first, they found that Ted was not just beaten, but his left hand was completely severed and most of his fingers on his right hand were missing. So this was not just a baseball bat, and this probably wasn't just a typical hunting knife or kitchen knife with how clean these cuts were. They assumed that it was something a lot bigger, something like a samurai sword or a katana. Police then attend to John's injuries, which since John was in the bushes as this young man was trying to take whatever sharp object he had and was trying to slice at John, the bushes were kind of in the way between them, so John didn't suffer as many intense injuries as Ted, but he did indeed suffer a lot of intense injuries for himself. And so Ted and John were immediately brought to the hospital.
What's that?
You just help this kid!
Let me just... Yeah, we'll leave it running for now.
How could people be so mean? How could people do that to a person? He's a woodworker that cut his hand off.
On the way to the hospital is when Ted unfortunately passed away due to excessive bleeding. Now, as for John, he was able to survive the incident, but although he survived, he did not survive making a full recovery afterwards. So when police spoke to the neighbors about what this young man looked like, they described him to be 6'4", 240 pounds, very young in the face, no facial hair, and he also ran off on his red motorbike. So police then set an alert out for a red motorbike, and when police spoke to even more neighbors is when they would find out the identity of this young man, and also find out that this isn't even the first time that this young man has went to this road specifically. This man, whose name was Peter Manfredonia, had been stalking this girl who lived on this road for the past couple months. Basically, the woman goes on to say that her and Peter met at University of Connecticut. They both dated very briefly, but then they broke things off, and after the breakup, it was said that Peter did not take the breakup very lightly and began stalking and harassing this girl and her entire family, and even her family themselves were in the process of trying to get a restraining order against Peter. There was even times where Peter would try to and successfully hack into this girl's social media accounts just to see if she was talking to anyone new. And so now that police finally have a name, Peter Manfredonia, California. They look up Peter into the system and figure out a little bit of his backstory. What they find out is that Peter is actually from Newtown, Connecticut. And if you guys know anything about Newtown, Connecticut, then you possibly may know that that is the same town where the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings happened. And for those who don't know, back in 2012, a man named Adam Lanza killed his mother and then drove his mother's car to Sandy Hook Elementary School, where he would fatally shoot 26 staff and students before eventually killing himself. The investigators said that Adam did act alone, but Adam also suffered a plethora of serious mental health issues as well as his fixation on violence. And Peter actually grew up on the same exact street that Adam Lanza lived in Newtown, Connecticut. Peter was a child of divorce, unfortunately. When he was 15 years old, his parents got a divorce. He lived with his mom full-time mostly, and she was a full-time high school teacher, while his dad just kind of went off to live in a different house and kind of live his own bachelor lifestyle. But as far as school and school life, Peter was said to be a pretty good student. He got good grades, he was on the honor roll, he was captain of the football team, captain of the track team. He was very well known in school. Everyone liked him. Everyone thought that he was super friendly and made a lot of jokes. And then after high school is when he attended University of Connecticut, where he would major in management and engineering. Before getting into today's case, I would like to give a big thank you to the sponsor of today's episode, DoorDash. With DoorDash, you could have pretty much anything from your local neighborhood delivered, from food to flowers to retail, straight to your door. And DoorDash is not just an on-demand delivery platform, it's also a way to navigate the complexities of modern life, offering more flexibility, bandwidth, and good times. DoorDash isn't just delivery, DoorDash is your door to more. I personally love DoorDash. I order from DoorDash all the time, literally from anything I need, and I feel like it's just so convenient because especially if I'm at home and I have a bunch of chores to do and there's that one thing that I need to get, if it's like laundry detergent or paper towels, but I don't want to take a whole hour to go out, get it, and then come back. Sometimes I just like to use DoorDash to get those small items so that while I'm completing my chores, it's like one of my other chores is already being done for me. It's just kind of like a weight off my shoulders a little bit. And it's delivered straight to you. And if you use my code haileyelizabeth50, you will get 50% off your first order up to $15, up to $10 off. Terms and conditions still apply. See description for details. And once again, thank you so much to DoorDash for sponsoring today's episode. Now back to your episode. And when Peter's picture was put out on the news asking people if they had seen Peter and how he is allegedly connected to a murder investigation, people at University of Connecticut, when they saw Peter's picture on the news, they were absolutely shocked because this was very unlike Peter. As I said, he was a very friendly guy. He was very well known, very well liked. And so something for this brutal to happen and be at the hands of Peter was just so mind-boggling to a lot of people. A lot of the students at University of Connecticut that knew Peter would say that Peter would sometimes talk about the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings and talk about like gun violence, basically wanting laws to be passed where nobody is allowed to purchase a firearm. And this is something that he was very vocal about. A lot of people didn't really bat an eye at it because again, he grew up in Newtown, Connecticut, where the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings happened. And on top of that, Peter also had young cousins that were in school that day when it happened. So people just kind of assumed, you know, maybe he's very passionate about it because it's very close to home for him. And in Peter's Instagram bio, again, his Instagram kind of seemed like the normal Instagram of a young 20-something-year-old man in college. And in one of like his little bits of his bio, it says Myers-Briggs and then like 2 dots and then an INTJ. Now, for those who don't know, Myers-Briggs is the personality test. Basically, Peter is saying that he has an INTJ personality. And for those who don't know what that means, apparently INTJ personality trait is one of the rarest personalities that you can have. People with INTJ personality type, in apostrophes, architects, are intellectually curious individuals with a deep-seated thirst for knowledge. INTJs tend to value creative integrity, straightforward rationality, and self-improvement. They consistently work towards enhancing enhancing intellectual abilities and are often driven by an intense desire to master any and every topic that piques their interest. But although for the majority, a lot of people on campus really did love Peter, it was also known by people that were very close to Peter who claimed that actually in the most recent months, Peter seemed to be kind of on a downward spiral. They claimed that Peter went from trying to advocate stopping commercial guns from being sold to the public when talking about like school shootings, but now he was kind of switching his beliefs where he was now idolizing Adam Lanza and what he did instead. And even in Peter's apartment, there was one time where Peter's friend went over to Peter's apartment just to hang out and see what was going on. And when he walked into Peter's apartment, not just in the living room, but in every room of the house, there was just writings on the wall. And they were in very odd places too. They weren't just like at shoulder level where you'd be able to easily write. Some you would need like a chair to get up there on the very, very high points of the ceiling. And a lot of the things that he would write on the walls were pretty much gibberish. He would say things such as, quote, "I'm not angry, I'm upset. We saw what happened when Adam snapped. We saw what happened when Thanos snapped. Now they'll see what happens when I snap." And then another portion he wrote on his whiteboard that said, quote, "Education is the future. The clean two-state engine model. Problem, engine combustion cycle. Oil gets mixed in with gasoline and is banned." Police also discovered that just a month before the attack on Ted in April of 2020 is when Peter's father was actually arrested for the SA of a 15-year-old girl. The story behind that is that Peter's father, Robert, was sitting at home and for some reason he was hanging out with two young girls. They were drinking vodka and smoking weed, and at one point one of the girls left, kind of leaving the one girl by herself, and that is where unfortunately Robert had taken advantage and SA'd this 15-year-old girl. He also begged her to spend the night, to which she said no, and apparently after this girl said no, Robert broke out into tears saying that he was devastated that she wouldn't spend the night. But then eventually, thankfully, this girl was able to leave Robert's house, go home, and tell her mom what just happened. When police were conducting a search of the area of where his red motorbike was last seen, they ended up finding Peter's motorbike less than 5 miles away, just completely abandoned on the side of the road. And next to his bike were also Peter's ID, clothing, and other personal items. And they ended up finding the samurai sword that was used as well, which was indeed a katana. And this was actually found in a wooded area nearby, and the sword was covered in blood. So that's how they knew that they had the right weapon. So now that the police had Peter's red motorbike, this was kind of a good and bad thing. It was a good thing because then they know that he probably is now traveling on foot and he can't really go that far. But the bad thing was that unfortunately there is a lot of places for Peter to go. Willington was, like I said, filled with nature and trees and trails and very heavily wooded areas. So unfortunately there was a lot of places for Peter to hide and stake out at. The following morning on Saturday, so the attack with Ted happened on a Friday. The following morning, Saturday, around 5 a.m. is when Peter would break into the home of 73-year-old Donald Hipsky. Donald Hipsky would claim that that morning he woke up in the middle of the night to the feeling of a gun in the back of his head and a male voice say, "Don't move, don't scream." And when Donald turned around, he noticed that it was Peter. He knew that it was his face because he had seen Peter on the news. When he noticed it was Peter, he didn't do anything. He got up, and that's when Peter directed Donald to the basement, took him to the basement, and then tied and duct taped Donald to a chair. And in Donald's home is where Peter would be for the next 24 hours. Peter would just steal and eat all of Donald's food. He would take all of Donald's firearms, and apparently, which is so odd because when Donald is found by police, it surprisingly seemed like Peter didn't really harm Donald in any way, and said that mostly for the whole 24 hours, they were just kind of hanging out. And I know when I say basement, you're probably thinking dark, creepy, scary, cold basement, but Donald's basement was a furnished basement. Donald and Peter would just be sitting down in the basement, eating food, watching TV, just kind of talking normally to one another. And Donald would also say that when Peter had introduced himself to Donald, he actually introduced introduced himself as Rick and not Peter, but Donald knew that it was Peter because he had seen his face on TV. So as like Donald and Rick are talking is when Rick confesses to Donald about everything that just happened. He said that he had murdered a man yesterday and he doesn't know why he did it. He just did it. He snapped and he doesn't know what to do because he can't go back and fix it, and he can't go back to the police because the police will never understand that it was just a mistake. And so Donald is telling Peter, you know, look, why don't you just go out to the police? Like, you may not know it, but what if you actually do have a good deal of just turning yourself in versus, you know, you on the run and things getting worse? But as they're literally having this conversation is when on the news, a breaking news segment comes up and it's Peter's face. And it's the news saying this man is armed and he is dangerous. He is on the run. If you see this man, please tell the police immediately. Donald looks to Rick and asks him, is your real name Peter? And that's when Peter just says, yeah. And then after that, Peter goes upstairs and leaves Donald there. He goes upstairs. He finds a big duffel bag that Donald had upstairs. He put all of Donald's firearms into this duffel bag along with a little bit of food, zipped it up, and then took Donald's car keys, took Donald's truck, and just drove off and left Donald tied up still in the basement. And he drove an hour out until Derby, Connecticut, where he would abandon Donald's car and then just go off on foot from there. Peter would also go on to tell Donald as well that his plan wasn't to turn himself into the police. What his plan really was is that he was going to go on the run for 2 weeks. I'm not really sure why he specifically chose 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, he was going to return to Myrtle Road and knock on the door of that girl that he used to stalk and harass. He would knock on her door, and when she would open the door is when Peter would off himself with a gun right in front of her. And that was his plan. He wanted to off himself in front of this girl and her family, but he also wanted to be on the run for at least 2 weeks beforehand. So Donald's truck is eventually found later on that night by police. They found it on the side of the road in Derby, Connecticut. So the police ran the plates, saw that it was Donald's truck. So they traveled an hour back to go to Donald's house and see what was happening. And when police enter into Donald's home is when they discover Donald still tied up in the basement.
State police. Anybody in the house?
You're upstairs?
He's up there.
State police.
Downstairs.
Identify yourself. Come out with your hands up. Come out with your hands up. Put your hands up. Hands up. Who's in here? Who's in? Anybody else in here?
Yeah, the guy you're looking for. That son of a bitch, he made a goddamn entrance in there. I've been here for 2 days.
Okay, where is he?
He took my pickup, he stripped the fucking house, he's gone.
Is he in here?
That guy's a wacko.
Is he in here?
He's not in here.
Turn. Where's the light? Where's the light?
Right to your left, officer.
Right here?
No, right in the corner. All the lights are right.
He's not in here?
He's not in.
Where'd he go?
I'm pretty sure.
Clear this area.
Is the pickup gone?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the white pickup. That son of a bitch.
He's not in here.
Got it. I am so happy to see you guys. How'd you get here?
Are you okay? Are you okay?
Yeah.
If you're in here, put your hands up if you're in here. Put your hands up.
Roger.
If you're in here, come out.
Donald, where's your guns? You have guns in the safe?
No, I got him upstairs. He took my goddamn Beretta, my fucking handgun.
Got handguns.
That son of a bitch.
This is clear.
Okay.
I don't know what else he took up there. I don't know where he's going, but he's dangerous.
Basement's clear. Basement's clear.
Do you want to fucking knife?
Document this.
We gotta get the rest of the house just in case he's not here.
He's here.
So how'd you get a hold of me? Jesus.
What do we need to do to get out of here?
Even guys do this, it's kind of
Yeah, we gotta cut the zip ties.
Did you get assaulted, sir? Did he hit you at all? Or
me?
did you get assaulted at
Did he
all?
hit you? You're not injured, right?
Did he strike you at all? Did he hit you, anything like that? No?
No, he's
Just
pretty
tied you up?
decent.
Okay.
Alright.
He put the gun to the back of my head when I was sleeping. He says, don't turn around, I'll blow your fucking head off. I said, oh boy, what a way to wake up in the morning.
What time was that?
It was maybe 5:15.
And that was today?
No, that was Saturday morning.
Saturday morning.
I fell asleep in front of the
So,
TV.
so where do you get the handgun from? In your, you had it?
No, I had it. I sleep with it,
Yeah.
especially with this joker running around.
Yep.
But I had it on the other bed.
Oh.
I was in the recliner.
Okay.
So what he did, he was barefoot. He
Yep.
walked around, he grabbed it.
Yep.
And that's what happened there.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I should have had it right there, you know.
So you were sleeping, and all of a sudden, this guy puts a gun in the back of your head.
We're actually ecstatic to see you standing upright. So.
He seemed like a fairly decent guy, but he goes off the handle. You
Yeah.
can't trust him. You
Right.
did capture him? He's under... Oh,
No.
he's still on the run.
No, he's still on the run.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd you do, abandon the pickup?
Yeah. Yep. We found your pickup truck in Derby.
Yeah, where was it? On the side of the road?
Some road.
The good thing is that you're okay. That's all that matters. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as tragic as.
Yeah. It could have been a lot worse. That was like some
Right.
scary movie type crap.
And after police clear the home and clear the room and clear that Donald was not physically harmed in any way, around this time, it is now Sunday morning. This is when police would receive another 911 call. This call would come in at around 11 a.m. on Sunday morning from a father claiming he had just found his son, 23-year-old Nicholas Eisele, dead in Nicholas's apartment that he shared with his girlfriend Shannon, but Shannon was nowhere to be found. Now, Nicholas and Peter actually did go to school together in Newtown, and although they went to school together, they weren't necessarily close. They played sports together sometimes, like football, and occasionally Nicholas would sell weed to Peter, but other than that, acquaintances, friendship, they didn't really have anything deeper than that. They were just more like casual friends. And so then after graduating is when Peter decided to go to the University of Connecticut, but after graduating for Nicholas, he actually decided to move out to Derby, Connecticut, an hour away, where he would live in an apartment with his girlfriend, Shannon Spies. And the home that Shannon and Nicholas lived in was kind of like a 3-story home, but then when you enter in the main level, you have the choice of going upstairs, and then there's like a whole family living upstairs, and then you go into the middle level, there's a whole family living in there, and then you go downstairs, and it's like a whole other apartment as well. And each floor has like their own kitchen, bathroom, everything, so it's made to be like separate living situations. And Nicholas and Shannon actually lived in the middle portion. So around this time is when Nicholas's downstairs neighbor claimed that around 9 a.m. is when she started to hear very loud shouting and yelling and banging, just kind of all sorts of commotion coming from upstairs. But the commotion, she said, only lasted about 5 minutes before she heard someone get in their car and drive off really quickly. When this neighbor heard this, they really thought nothing of it, mostly because Nicholas and Shannon would get into a lot of arguments. And so this neighbor just kind of assumed, okay, maybe they got into a really bad argument again. Maybe it's just them yelling again. And then maybe the woman went into her car and drove off. So they didn't really think too much of this until that's when Nicholas's dad was trying to contact Nicholas, but was getting no response. So he eventually just decided to go over to Nicholas's home. And that's when he discovered Nicholas shot 2 times in the head, and Nicholas's father immediately called the police. Nicholas's girlfriend Shannon would go on to say that that morning she had actually woken up to Nicholas not being in bed. She heard Nicholas in the living room, kind of arguing with someone in the living room, and she remembers Nicholas saying things like, quote, "Relax, calm down," and Shannon from the bedroom yelled out, quote, "Is everything okay?" And Nicholas yelled back, quote, Peter Manfredonia is in the apartment right now. And so when Shannon heard that, she got up from bed, she walked out of the bedroom and into the living room, and that is when she made eye contact with Peter Manfredonia, who was in the middle of their living room holding a gun. At this point, when she saw Peter with the gun, is when Shannon immediately tried to reach for the phone to call the police, but when she did, that's when Peter ran over and put a gun to her head and told her not to call the police. But now, since Nicholas sees a gun to Shannon's head, he immediately tries to protect Shannon. So he tries to lunge at Peter to try to get the gun out of his hands, but unfortunately, this just led Peter to shoot Nicholas twice, and those 2 shots did eventually kill Nicholas. Peter then pointed the gun at Shannon. He then told Shannon to direct him to all of the money in the home, so she did. That's when Peter grabbed all of the cash that they had in the home, and then he then, still with the gun pointed to Shannon's head, directed her to go outside to her car. She went into the driver's side, and then that's when Peter went to the back seat that was behind the driver's side, still with the gun pointed to the back of her head. And that's when he just told her to drive. He didn't tell her where to drive or what turns to take. He just told Shannon to drive. And even to this day, it's very unknown why exactly Peter decided to target Nicholas specifically. Because as I said, Nicholas and Peter were not very close. Even in high school, they were just kind of acquaintances. Like, they were on the football team together, and sometimes Nicholas would sell a little something to Peter on the side. Other than that, they didn't really talk. And for context, at this point, it's 2020. So it would have been around 5 years since the 2 of them had graduated high school. And then after high school is when Peter decided to go to University of Connecticut, get his master's in engineering, to which he was still going to college and only had a year left of college to achieve his master's. So he went out to University of Connecticut, he went to college, and then as for Nicholas, he went his separate way as well. He went to Derby, Connecticut, where he was living in an apartment with his girlfriend, and the 2 of them have just been living separate lives for the past 5 years. And when police looked into text messages and social medias, they found that the 2 really had no contact with each other over the past 5 years. Why Peter would choose Nicholas specifically is very unknown, and also why Peter even knew where Nicholas lived is very unknown. Because if you want to find out where someone lives, that's not something that's like just plastered on billboards. Like, you have to go out of your way to search into this person's name, look at their public record, and then find their address and try to confirm if it's still their current address. Like, there's a lot of moving parts to that. So again, why would Peter go that out of his way to find Nicholas, a man that he hasn't spoken to since high school? And even in high school, he still barely spoke to him. The only thing that the police can really think as to why Peter went to Nicholas's home specifically was because after everything came out on the news about Peter, they were showing his name, showing his face. Nicholas saw that and was like, oh my God, that's the kid I used to go to high school with. I literally still follow him on social media. So after that, Nicholas unfollowed Peter on all social medias and blocked him on all social medias. So maybe that's why Peter went to Nicholas's house specifically. But again, why would that even affect Peter at all, considering he had no type of relationship with Nicholas? Peter and Shannon to drive for about 2.5 hours up until it was nearly dark outside. They drove and they drove, and during this drive is when Peter would actually get Shannon's phone, delete all the apps off of her phone, as well as deleting her iCloud account. And Peter tried to make his own iCloud account on her phone, but under the name Rick Sanchez. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with the name Rick Sanchez, Rick has to do with earlier when Peter was telling Donald to refer to him as Rick, but Rick Sanchez is also the name of Rick from the big show Rick and Morty. So we're kind of assuming that that's maybe where he got the connection from. He wanted to be referred to as Rick, like from Rick and Morty. But also while driving is where Peter would confess everything that has happened in the past 36 hours to Shannon. He would go on to tell Shannon about how he killed and beat Ted, how he sliced off his hand and his fingers, and then after that he was on the run, and so he broke into Donald's house. He kept him held hostage in his basement for like 24 hours before eventually, since he knew that the police were still looking for him, that's when he went went upstairs of Donald's home. He took a black duffel bag that Donald had in the home, took all of Donald's firearms, put them in the black duffel bag along with a little bit of food, zipped it up, grabbed Donald's pickup truck keys, took Donald's pickup truck and just drove it to Derby, Connecticut. He told Shannon how he had dropped off the truck on the side of the road, and then from there he walked on foot to Nicholas's house. And that's where he murdered Nicholas, and that is where he's at right now. And I also want to quickly mention that while Shannon was driving the car, there were instances where she was trying to kind of drive a bit erratically to try to catch the attention of some officers. And then there was even another time where she had a thought of swerving her car into a tree. But when she went to go make that motion to try to swerve the car, she heard Peter in the back seat and his gun had clocked as if he was about to shoot her. And so when she heard that, she swerved her car back on the road and continued to drive. He doesn't know why exactly he killed Ted. He said that he felt like he just snapped in the moment, and he was also on that road to begin with for the girl that he was stalking during that time. He was just kind of planning on stalking and harassing the girl, but now that Ted was involved, he said that it kind of messed up his plans a little bit. So out of frustration, I guess, he decided to murder Ted, and he again still tells Shannon, I don't know why I did it. I just kind of did it. And now I'm too scared to go to the police. They're not going to understand that I didn't mean to do it. They're probably just going to see me as a murderer and lock me up for the rest of my life, which obviously, if you murder someone, you are going to get locked up for murder. But he still claims that he never wanted to kill Ted, and even told Shannon, quote, innocent people just kept getting in the way, and that made him frustrated. And so that is why he needed to kill Nicholas, and that's why he needed to kill Ted. Shannon and Peter would drive for almost 2.5 hours and made their way to Columbia, New Jersey, where Shannon had told Peter that she was getting too tired and she couldn't be behind the wheel anymore. She felt like she was going to fall asleep and that she physically just couldn't drive anymore. And surprisingly, Peter was completely fine with this. And he was like, yeah, that's okay. You're fine. Let's just pull over to the side of the road then. So they did. They pulled over to the side of the road. Peter put his gun away. Shannon walked out the car. Peter walked out the car. And as they were standing on the side of the road next to this car is when a pedestrian was just kind of walking down the road. This pedestrian's name was Kyle. So Peter approached Kyle and was like, hey man, my truck just died out. Do you mind calling me an Uber real quick? I just need to get home. So a helpful person, he was like, yeah, of course, I'll call you an Uber. So Kyle called Peter an Uber. Peter, Kyle, and Shannon was just kind of off to the side, not saying anything because she knew that Peter was armed and that he could do anything at any moment. So she just kind of stood there and was silent, and they basically waited until Peter's Uber showed up. And also one more quick detail that I wanted to add. Before Peter got into the Uber, he had actually given a hug to Shannon before getting into the Uber. And he told her that he was sorry, inferring that he was sorry for killing Nicholas. But I thought it was also very chilling that before he left, he had given Shannon a hug beforehand. So I thought that was also something very important to mention. Peter got in his Uber and then just drove off. And immediately when the Uber drove off, is where Shannon just broke down and burst into tears. And she started telling Kyle everything that just happened. She said that that man just murdered her boyfriend right in front of her that morning. And then he had a gun to her head. They've been driving for the past 2.5 hours. Peter was confessing to her all of the crimes that he has committed. He's already killed one man. That duffel bag that he was holding was filled with firearms and guns that he had stole from a person's home that he had held hostage for 24 hours. So Shannon starts telling all of this to Kyle and says, we need to make sure that nothing happens to that Uber driver. So immediately is when Kyle called the police.
So you picked up the gentleman or no?
No, the gentleman pulled into the truck stop and said he needed an Uber.
Okay.
And offered me money to call an Uber, said he needed to get to work. So I called him an Uber.
Okay.
He just got into the Uber, but he's armed. And I want to make sure.
What kind of weapon does he have?
He has a little pistol. He fired 3 rounds into my boyfriend this morning.
Oh my, okay. So, all right, he got into a Chevy Impala. Look at your Uber account and tell me what the plate is on that vehicle.
Yeah, well, I'm really concerned about the Uber driver.
Okay, so give me the info. All right, put me on speaker. Look at your Uber account right now and get me that information.
Yes.
All right, what's the
guy who's running away?
Yes, what's his name?
His name is Peter Manfredonia. He's wanted in Connecticut. Trust me, just Google him and you will know exactly who it is.
It's fine. And how do you know him?
He showed up at my house this morning and shot my boyfriend.
Okay, but how do you know
They
him?
were friends since elementary school. They went to Newtown together in Connecticut. We're from Connecticut. He put a gun to my head and made me drive him here.
Okay, how the two of you know each other?
He's the one who called the Uber for the guy who
I know. I know, but you don't know each other.
Listen. No, she pulled up, and this guy just wanted an Uber.
Do you know what address that he gave the Uber driver?
Yes. Starbucks, the Starbucks on Hamilton Street in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Does he know someone there?
No, he's on the run.
He's on the run.
He has mental health issues. He snapped, and he murdered someone.
All right.
Then he murdered again.
Okay, just hold on 1 second for me. Do not hang up.
He pulled up asking for an Uber.
All right.
I was trying to be a good guy and called one.
That's fine. You didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, I'm really scared that he's going to do something bad to the guy, but I didn't know what... I couldn't call the cops right there because I figured he had a gun on him or something. Miss?
Hold on 1 second.
Miss?
Yeah.
The Uber trip just ended, which it shouldn't have ended already, so I'm really concerned.
He what?
About that.
What did he do?
The Uber trip, it ended. The trip ended. So I'm
Where did it
concerned
end?
I don't know. It just says, thank you for riding. I'm scared that he did something to the guy. Okay, here's where it ended. I can tell you where it ended.
Go ahead.
355 Lincoln Ave, East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania.
And thankfully, when police checked in on this Uber driver, he claimed that the reason why the ride ended early was because Peter said that he didn't want to be dropped off at the location that he was being dropped off at anymore. He instead just wanted to be dropped off on the side of the road and just continue walking. And so that's exactly what the Uber driver did. He just pulled over, dropped Peter off, and then just ended the ride. But thankfully, nothing happened to this Uber driver. But then later on that Sunday, about 9 hours later, right before sundown, is when Peter would be seen again. He would be seen walking railroad tracks behind a Walmart in Pennsylvania. And this is all happening 2 days after the attack on Ted. So police are now making this into a multi-state level search. They're saying that Peter was wearing a white t-shirt, black gym shorts, and holding a black backpack filled with firearms. And Peter, over the next few days, would be seen multiple more times, but none of the police could really track down exactly where he was to find him. They just saw him walking on security footage. Like, there was this one time throughout those couple of days where Peter was seen on security footage hiding behind a fire station in Scranton, Pennsylvania, before he just kind of wandered off and walked into the wooded area behind the fire station. Peter then made it all the way to Maryland, where he would then steal a car and was seen at a convenience store before driving in the car that he just stole and then just abandoning that car on the side of the road. And then Peter would continue to go his travels on foot. And then after abandoning that car, that's when Peter would order another Uber to the town right over in Hagerstown, Maryland. And then on May 27th, 2020, this was Wednesday night and 5 days after the murder of Ted. That night at around 10 p.m., Peter was finally arrested. He was arrested at a truck stop because in this area, there were police littered all over the place trying to find Peter because all they found was sightings of him, but they never actually saw him walking around. But on May 27th is when Peter was finally found. There were 2 officers staked out at a truck stop, and they were actually in the middle of talking about Peter, talking about what he's done, talking about what he was last seen wearing. And literally, as they're sitting there talking about Peter, they just see Peter right in front of them, just walk right past the truck stop. And they're thinking, oh my God, that's him. So they immediately go up to Peter and immediately arrest him. And when Peter was arrested, he put up no fight at all. He didn't yell at the police. He didn't try to resist arrest. And he even afterwards brought the police to the location where he dropped his duffel bag at, because there was a while ago where he had dropped off his duffel duffel bag full of firearms because he didn't want to get caught. And so he just dropped it off in a wooded area. And then after he was arrested, he brought the police to that area to recover the duffel bag and all of the firearms. After this, Peter was met with multiple charges, such as first-degree kidnapping, murder, first-degree robbery, attempted murder, abduction, and first-degree with a firearm. When Peter was later brought into questioning, he claimed that he had a blackout moment. He said that he forgot most of what he had done because he hadn't slept in all 5 days. He claims that he doesn't remember even killing Nicholas. He doesn't know how he ended up in Derby. He says that he has no recollection of holding Shannon at gunpoint and making her drive for hours. He says that even when he was walking around on foot, he has no clue how he even ended up in Maryland. He also says in his statement that what he remembers is going to Myrtle Road the day that he attacked Ted early that morning. He had went to Myrtle Road because he was going to visit that girl that he was stalking and harassing, and he also had plans of taking his own life right in front of her, or right in front of her family. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this was part of Peter's plan, but after he was on the run for 2 weeks. But now he's claiming that on that day that he attacked Ted and murdered Ted, that was supposed to be the day that he knocked on this girl's door and offed himself in front of her, but he wasn't able to do that because Ted got in the way. Sometimes innocent people just get in the way, and he eventually murdered Ted, and he couldn't stick around. He couldn't stay there because the police were on their way, so he just drove off on his motorbike, dropped it off on the side of the road, and continued to travel on foot.
I didn't have any end goal. So going into that year, I was extremely depressed. Stopped working out, binge eating, any bad habit that you could possibly name. And I had, nothing, like, no mindset to change it, no anything. I mean, that, when I drew on the wall, it was pretty much just, I was in a manic state, and kind of anything, I couldn't even remember half the things that were on it, if you ask me now.
Would you compare that manic state that you were feeling then to maybe what you've been feeling the past few days? Is there any similarities there? I can't help but compare it in my own mind to the fact that you're having a hard time remembering what happened the past few days, as evidenced by a lot of the gaps in what you're telling us. So are there any similarities?
Yes, I would say there are definitely similarities.
Okay.
And during Peter's interrogation, I feel like you can possibly tell from that one small clip that I showed you, but throughout that whole interrogation, Peter was definitely trying to brush off his actions. Like, he was trying to make it seem like not that big of a deal. He was saying, oh yeah, all that stuff that you saw me like writing in my apartment, all that weird stuff that you saw, that is not me anymore. That was just me going through some sort of episode or some sort of psychotic break. I don't even know what was going on. I've been on a downward spiral for the past couple months. But he's kind of explaining it in a way that, like, oh, that person that you knew, that's the old me. But now the person that you're talking to, I'm not going to do this again. Like, I'm a completely changed person now. I would never do anything like that again. Even though within the past 5 days, I've murdered 2 people and also took another 2 hostage. And that's how you can tell that I'm like completely fine, completely okay to go on the streets again. Like, again, I feel like he's just kind of belittling his actions as a way to make the police feel like it's really not that big of a deal, or like to convince the police to give him a lighter sentence or to just let him go under the impression that he's never gonna do this again. And this statement probably would have a little bit more leverage to it if Peter was the one that turned himself in, but Peter did not turn himself in. He was actually eventually caught still on the run. So by dropping off all the firearms, Peter knew in the moment what he was doing was wrong because he specifically didn't want to have the firearms on his person. He also abandoned every crime scene that he was a part of because he knew that what he was doing was wrong, and he knew that if the police showed up, he would most likely go to jail. But he didn't want to go to jail. So he kept on running and doing more and more crimes. In the moment, he was conscious enough to realize what he was doing was wrong. He knew that what he was doing was wrong, and he didn't want to go to jail. He didn't want to wait for the police. That's why he ran. That's why he had plans of running for 2 weeks and then eventually ending it all. He knew what he was doing was wrong. So that's why he went out of his way to try to run and run. Peter did indeed try to do a mental health plea where he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and anxiety. But in early 2023, while Peter was still in jail awaiting trial, it said that Peter sort of had a change of heart. He claims that he didn't want the victims' families to have to go through an entire trial and sit through all of the crime scene photos and everything that he had done. He said that he didn't want Nicholas's family to be there. He didn't want Ted's family to be there. He didn't want any of that for the victims' families. He kind of just wanted to get the trial over with. And so then that's when Peter ended up accepting a plea deal, which he was given 2 55-year sentences to run concurrently. So that's basically life in prison, and he was also given no possibility of release. And yeah, that is the end of today's case. I hope you guys found this case interesting, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I would love to hear all of your comments about the case in the comments below. I feel like this case from beginning to end is just very shocking. It is shown that Peter did have very serious mental health issues because him writing all of those very obscure things on the walls of his apartment. If you are doing that sort of thing just by yourself with no one watching, no one around, and he didn't really expect anyone to find those writings either. And so him doing that by himself, or going through some sort of episode or some sort of break, and they have all of these thoughts, all of these very non-connecting thoughts, and all of these non-connecting thoughts are just going back and forth in your head. You need somewhere to let it out. You need somewhere to put it. And so that's why he began writing all of his thoughts on the walls, because at least if they lived on the walls, then they couldn't live in his head anymore. And it's clear that Peter didn't do that around people. No one even really knew about the state of his apartment until his friend came over one day, and also when the police came over as well and they saw everything. So it was very known and seen that Peter had multiple mental health issues. On top of that, he was also stalking and harassing that girl's family. And so Peter did indeed have very serious mental health issues going on at the time. Again, there was some sort of leverage of consciousness throughout all of that. As I said, he threw away the duffel bag of firearms because he knew that if he was caught with it, he would get in trouble. He stole Donald's car, he stole another random person's car in Maryland, and then he also technically stole Shannon's car. And so throughout all 3 of those instances, he had abandoned the car on the side of the road. He had even abandoned his motorbike on the side of the road because, again, he knew that if he was caught driving that car, he would probably get stopped by police and he would probably get arrested because he knew what he was doing was wrong. So it seemed like throughout all of this, Peter did have some sort of conscience to understand the knowings of what he was doing, and he knew that what he was doing was wrong, but he did it anyway. And some of this can also be explained to a lack of sleep as well. A lot of people were talking about that too, saying that since he hasn't slept in 5 days, sometimes extreme sleep deprivation can cause blackout episodes. But those are just my personal observations from the case. And also, I do believe that Peter did deserve his life sentence because, as Donald said when Donald was captured by the police, and even we saw it a little bit with Shannon as well, it seemed like Peter was a decent guy. Like, he would have conversations with people. You were able to have a conversation with them. Even like Donald had told the police, you know, he's a really decent guy. You could really have a conversation with him, but he just flies off the handle so quick, and you don't know when it's going to happen, and you don't know what he's going to do when he does fly off the handle. So that just makes him into a very dangerous individual. He had duct taped and tied him to a chair to make sure that Donald didn't leave. And then other than that, Peter didn't really do anything to Donald for the next 24 hours. He was just kind of making sure that Donald didn't leave so that he wouldn't call the police. But other than that, Donald said that they just kind of like hung out. Like Peter would bring food down to the basement for the both of them. Again, like Donald said, although you can have these casual conversations with him, he does fly off the handle very unexpectedly. Kind of like when he saw his face on TV as he was like hanging out with Donald. And then when he saw his face on TV, he immediately went upstairs, put a bunch of firearms into a duffel bag, threw it into the back of Donald's truck, went into Donald's truck, and drove it all the way to Derby. That is him kind of flying off the handle a little bit and then just leaving Donald tied up in the basement. Another example of this is also from when he was holding Shannon hostage as well. He had a gun to the back of her head the entire time, but other than that, he didn't physically harm her at all. He didn't like hit her or scratch her or physically abuse her at all. He just kind of talked to her the entire time. Peter was driving with Shannon, and Shannon had said that she couldn't drive anymore because she was just too tired. At that point, you would suspect Peter to maybe get angry, maybe hit Shannon, maybe put Shannon in the passenger seat so he could drive the car, but he didn't do any of that. He was very okay with it, and he was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. That's understandable. You're good. Let's just pull over and I'll call myself an Uber. And then they did. And then they pulled over and then he called himself an Uber and then he left. And like, that is another example of like, you just don't know when this man is going to just fly off the handle and do something completely unexpected. But again, those are all my own personal observations about the case, but I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments below. And yeah, that is all from me. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day today. Make sure to be safe out there. And as always, I love you, I love you, I love you, and I will see you guys next week.